All right, we're here back again for part two,
Part two.
and we're going to dive right into it. I certainly don't like to waste any time by any means. So,
Okay.
we were kind of leaving off on the note talking about the system, right? The systems that we have in place, and we kind of had discussed, even in other videos, the school system and the work system and things like that. And so, one of the first things I wanted to dive into, though, because I think a lot of times we can get distracted by picking apart the things we don't like
Hmm.
and we kind of ignore the things that we do like. So
For
when it
sure.
comes to things, and this can be in general, if you want to relate it to work or even to school or just in general, right? What parts about the system do you like? And what parts about the system do you feel are like a benefit to you or anyone?
Yeah, I think the system definitely points out a lot of key fundamentals that are really helpful. Stuff that you need, just pretty much the basics. They go over a lot of the basics, but then there's a lot of things that the system doesn't provide that's outside of the basics that I feel like you can get when you take a look outside the perspective of the system. Um, if you just look at the general education, the school system, for example, there's definitely a lot of things that you can take away that are really positive from the school system. The fact that you are learning basic math, stuff that is actually going to come in handy down the road. You're learning basic history, things about your heritage, how the U.S. or whatever country you come from started, just basic things like that. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff that's going to ensure survival is not taught in the system. I feel like. Things regarding money, finances, um, entrepreneurship, which I think should be encouraged and taught more of. It's just unfortunate that we've never had anything like that. Even laws on or like classes on taxes that or teach you about local laws, things like that, stuff that you can actually benefit from when you do grow up and you get a job and you get a house and you start having bills to pay and things like that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. No, and it's definitely challenging when it comes to figuring out what is important to teach and what is not. But it sounds like some of the subjects you appreciate and feel
Hmm.
like they did help you. When it comes to other parts of the system, right? When you think about where you're working or even just the athletic structures in place, I think both of us
Yeah,
grew up in that field.
yeah.
So, do you feel like any of those aspects were something that you really benefited from? Those systems in place?
Yeah, for one, I think sports teach you a lot about teamwork, and I think that's a great takeaway. You can't take on the world by yourself. Nobody can. You're never going to get as far as you could.
You could try,
You could try, you could try, but you're going to get so much further with support. People there to help you get through the difficult situations, stuff that you start doubting yourself about, or just the fact that you don't have all the skills in the world. And by having a team that provides other skills outside of what you can bring to the table, it's going to put you in a lot further place ahead of whoever.
right,
Um,
right, and you
yeah,
actually using other people's skills that you don't have to your advantage, rather than just being jealous, or which we've kind of talked about before,
hmm.
rather than just feeling like oh well, they have something I don't, and I don't
Yeah.
like them for that reason. But
Yes.
Um, what sport did you do then growing up, and or even were there a couple sports? Um, if you want to dive into that, and even
Yeah.
if you can remember some examples, that make you think of times where you're like, yeah, I really learned something here,
Yeah.
or like this is something I'll never forget.
Hmm. Well, I throughout grade school, high school, even into the collegiate level, I played or I ran track and field.
Mm.
But I dabbled in football. Football was a huge sport for me in high school, as well as swimming. I did for a year. It was only a year, but still some of the hardest stuff I've ever done in my life was through swimming. Just in terms of training, what that looked like. Um, but stuff that I pulled from that helped, kind of allow me to recognize the importance of teamwork were situations where it was game day for football and, just having that team bonding initially before the big game and knowing that it's more than just a one player game. And in order to score a touchdown or get the win, all players need to have their head in the game, not just, three or four or one. Um, and so I learned the importance of just building structure and having support of other people. You drive yourself crazy if you're trying to tackle the world by yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially when other people are working as a team and they
Yes.
do have that to their benefit.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to
Mhm.
work against a team, I mean, that's even
Your odds are not too good. That's for sure.
right, right.
Yeah.
Um, no, I totally understand. I feel like when I was in sports, there were a lot of examples where you really do have to put that trust in other people. You have to learn
Yeah.
how to hand it off, and if you don't, then you pay the consequences.
Yeah.
And like you think you won't, or even you think that like oh well they're not going to do it as good as I can, and so you try. Like you're saying, you can
Mm.
try to take those things on, but you end up taking on too much, and then you fall on your face, and you drop the
Yeah.
ball in all categories rather
Yeah.
than just messing up here and there. I
True.
mean, a lot of things
Mhm.
start to slip through the cracks, or at least that's been my experience when I feel like I'm taking on too much. Um, but when it comes to, it seems like you already kind of mentioned a few of the things, but when it comes to the system and you're thinking about different things that you don't like, what can you elaborate a little bit more on those? I mean, I know you mentioned some classes in school, but is there anything more specifically that you feel like you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think we should first kind of just go back to what the definition of the system is. So, what does that entail? When I think of the system, I think of basically a generalized path that everybody in society follows or accepts. And it's kind of the norm. It's the standard, it's the expectation. So, over the course of a lifetime for a human being, it would be, grow up, you get a good education, you go to college, you get a degree in something that is going to be a successful field for you one day. And then you eventually get that job and you provide for a family. You have a house. You pay your bills. You live a good life, and that's considered a good life. That's considered what we should all follow and strive to achieve. But in reality, I think that there is so much more potential outside of the system. You know, that's not it. That's not all we can expect out of a good life, out of a life that we should try and fulfill. There's so much more. And there's so much more that is more in tune with who you are, right? And everybody has their own idea of what they want to be or the type of person they want to uphold or the occupation they want to have. It's all deep down inside of everybody, I think. But so many of us let the system overpower that and almost blind us from the truth, of what is truly a good life for us and the best life for us. And so, in a sense, the system could be a good life. You can live a very happy life in the system. You've escaped so many other things that so many um, have happened to them. People like slavery. It goes on and on. The list on and on and on. Poverty, the fact that you won't have any food for your next meal. So living a life inside the system could be good in that sense, giving you a lot of privileges. But at the same time, there could be so much more than that. If you have the potential, like we do, living in the US, to be any type of person you want to be and express your creativity and just freedom, the fact that we have that, then it's almost an obligation. You owe it to yourself to be the best version of yourself, to live past the system. And so I think the system expands only to so far, but past that point, there's it's unbelievable. There's so
Yeah.
much opportunity.
Yeah. No,
So
it sounds like you're saying that people are relying too heavily on the systems. Like
yeah,
the systems can be really good, but at
not
some
even
point, right, it seems
yeah.
like at some point it almost seems like if you rely too heavily on them, you can't expect them to provide the things that you really need, right? Or at least the things you need to fulfill your life as much as you can. I mean, it
Well,
kind of
true,
seems
and
like
I think yeah, in a sense that's true, but also at the same time, I don't think people really give it a thought of what their life truly could be like. They just the second they hear the system and they see everybody else doing it, they just catch on, and it's almost like they're blinded in a way because that's all they're thinking about is when's my next paycheck coming in? When am I getting my raise? How am I going to take care of my kids and my family? How am I going to be a good dad or a good mom? A good parent? Um, and how can I get a good house so my friends will like me, my coworkers will accept me? how can I get to this point of normalcy, this point of the system? And so we're not even giving ourselves an opportunity to think about what is outside of the system. What are the possibilities? And what little things can I start doing to get me closer to that feeling of happiness? So I think some people like the fact that the system exists and there's so much comfort in it, and they're okay with living that life. But I also think there's so many people out there who don't realize what they could have other than the system, and they're not happy with the system. But they think it is the definition of happiness, so they're chasing it. And I just wish, there was a way for everybody to come to that realization that there is more potential. There's something different if you want it. And I think that's really what the system is limited to.
Yeah. Like, it can have its benefits, it can have its purpose, and almost maybe even its purpose is a springboard into something that is your own, or even something that's your own direction that's unique for you.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can look at it that way, maybe people would have a little bit more success, or have a little bit more even faith in the system, because they know it's not a crutch, right? A springboard is a far different tool than a crutch, right? And so if you're able to think about it that way, or even use it that way,
maybe it's not even close to being a crutch. Maybe it's a perk on the other side. The fact that you can have a job here in the system that will supply income for you to create your future, the true future you want, or put that money aside to go into your own business.
Right.
So in a sense, you could take advantage of the system to build whatever future you want outside of the system.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if, it kind of sounds like too, though, that, even if you are in the system and you're content with it, or some people are, but there are the people that are in the system that aren't content with it, right? Like, if those people could know that there's something more to do, then maybe it would really change their lives, right? Like, if they weren't continually chasing something that maybe they shouldn't be chasing, right? Like, they're chasing this achievement or this ladder. It kind of sounds like you're saying, or they're just trying to climb a ladder.
Yeah.
Rather than turn around and look at the view, right? You are climbing a ladder, and maybe that's what you want to do, and it's important. But hey, there's lots of other things that are going on.
So many other things, and that's why it's important to just stop and take a breather for a second. And we had an earlier podcast about this. We were talking about the fact that you need to evaluate yourself, see where you're at, and be able to do that. And I think that's what will also contribute to you, having a chance to think, is this really what's for me? And should I keep up with where I'm at in the system, doing whatever I'm doing currently? Or is there more possibility of things that will make me happier? So just going back to constantly evaluating yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's a crucial tool that I'm sure a lot of us neglect.
I still neglect it,
Right.
But I feel fortunate that we can have this conversation and understand the fact that it is important, and we should be doing that.
Yeah.
To advance.
Which is what we're really, when you boil it down, that's what it comes to. That's important. If you're making the effort, and if you're not if the effort isn't getting you to where you want, then you have to reevaluate the effort, right? But at least there's effort, because without the effort, then there's nothing. There's just hopes and dreams. There's just placards that say things, right? They're not really real, tangible things that are, that you did physically that actually made a difference. And so it kind of sounds like too, that when you're saying to take this system, use it to your advantage, and use it to transition yourself away from it almost. Is that your solution to helping solve the system? Because maybe part of the problem with the system is that too many people think that it's supposed to do something that it can't. It kind of feels like you're touching on that point a little bit. Maybe I'm grabbing it out of nowhere, but
I would say there's nothing wrong with the system.
Yeah.
To be honest, it does provide a lot of great lives. And you can use it to your advantage if you want something that's other than the system. So I think it is very beneficial. And as much as I don't think it's the best case scenario for everyone, it still is something that we all need, because it does provide a lot of happy lives. And I think there'd be a lot of chaos if the system were never in place. Who knows? I can't even predict whether everybody out there, 100% of the population would be entrepreneurs, built their own business, built an empire. Every single person on the planet is a millionaire because the system didn't exist. I doubt that will. There's no way that would ever be the case.
No,
To
it would
me,
not
it's
be.
probably the complete opposite. So I
Probably.
could see there being a lot of chaos. I think what we need to do is almost desensitize the system. Bring it down and say, this isn't everything. This isn't the most important thing. This is here for you, but almost just uplift those who took the chance, took the risk, and built something of their own. Pursued their dreams, pursued happiness. That should be encouraged more. And I think we're getting to that point. We definitely recognize it a lot more than we did 50 years ago. But I think more than ever, more than anything else, we should encourage people to find their own definition of happiness, and that is not just through the system. And like I said, I feel like we're getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you make a really great point when you bring that up. But and I wasn't even necessarily anticipating that, or hadn't necessarily thought of it that way. Because a lot of times I think the narrative, or where I find myself, is that it's like, oh well, if something isn't right, or people that aren't living the lives they're supposed to, like, it's automatically the system's fault.
Yeah.
But in reality, maybe it isn't the system's fault, and maybe there's a little bit more responsibility that needs to be placed on the individual, right? And I think that gets neglected very, very often, right? I feel like people are it's easy to blame something else. It's easy to blame the system, or blame the people around you, blame everything that is laid out in front of you, for your demise. Or if you take on the responsibility that maybe, okay, I'm responsible for my life, right? Like, I am responsible for what happens to me. I'm responsible for the people I'm associated with, or even the system I'm associated with. Because even though we say system, right, and we're kind of generalizing it, there really are a multitude of systems within the system.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it isn't just that there isn't just one school system. There isn't just one government, even technically. There is this breakdown of where there's state level programs, there's national programs, there's city level program, town level programs, community level programs, right? You can break it down as much as you want, and you can, same thing, you can blame the system all day long, but at the end of the day, I think what really comes down to, what's important to focus on, is what you can change. And if a system takes decades to change, or even generations to change, you can't sit around hoping that it's going to change to benefit you specifically, right?
It's true.
I mean, you have to cling on to what you can find that works for you. And that's kind of almost the benefit of the US, is that you get to do that. There are a lot of places where you don't get to pick and choose the systems you go through, or that
not only that, but you don't even have the time to think about what system you're going through, or the fact that you've got these options and you can try this out and you can try that out. There's so many places out there where all they're thinking about 24/7 is survival, right? So you don't even have the chance to say, oh, I don't want that lifestyle. I want to live this lifestyle. You don't even have that opportunity. So we are so fortunate to be at a position to where we can truly do whatever we want. Sure, it's hard, and it may take many years, and maybe it's a very small likelihood that you're going to make it to fame, or fortune, or whatever it is. But we have the opportunity to give ourselves a shot, and so many people don't ever take that shot, and so many people don't even get that shot.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that, you make a good point of, it's almost it's better to count the blessings, right?
Yeah.
That maybe looking at what's wrong with the system, or even how you can change the system, is the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah.
Right? If you can look at what you can personally change, and if that's really all that you can change, then you are doing the most that you can. And I think that, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, where we get stuck in this, we think that we're doing something, but then we look at our results and we're really not getting anywhere, or changing anything that we think that we are. Right? I mean, it's very easy to romanticize what's going on, right? But if you really boil it down and you really look at yourself, I mean, that's probably almost back to the example when you're talking about the football team, right? Coming on to game day.
Yeah.
Is you have that feeling inside where you're like, oh, I can do it. I can do it all. And you get that, like, just overwhelming big egotistical mind that gets
It's
going,
good that
right?
we have it,
Well,
but
right.
it will fool you.
But you get to that point where you're starting to think things that aren't really real, and then you get to the reality of it. You get put on your ass.
Mm-hmm.
You lose. You look at the scoreboard at the end of the day, and you're like, okay, something needs to change.
That's what's happened.
Yeah, because clearly, what was going on up here was not what I thought it was, or not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So just remembering that if you try to just be honest with what's going on, look at the results that you really have.
Yeah.
Because, it's easy to think about the results that you want. But if you look at what's really happening, you'll start to realize that, okay, maybe I do need to just make some changes. Maybe just it isn't as hard as I think it is. Or it isn't.
And, it just touches into just take it step by step, small, brick by brick. We talked about it.
Yeah.
We're laying brick for a house, perfect house. Just take it step by step and appreciate those small moments of progress. And over time, that'll add up. I really think that's the way to go. Don't be so hard on yourself, Life is tough, and you're going to make it a whole lot more tough if you're always in your head and beating yourself up for where you are, where you want to be. Appreciate the fact that you get to think about where you can be, and you have the chance and the opportunity and the time to pursue it if you wanted to. There's so much to be grateful for, and I think we're taking advantage of those things more and more than ever before. There's so many things to be grateful for. There really is. I mean, the stuff that we take advantage of, other people in other countries and other parts of the world are unbelievably happy to have, and they thank God every day, or their higher power every day, for whatever that is, that they have that in their life. And here we are, we don't even think about it twice, if we even think about it at all. It's just a part of our life, it's a part of our day, and it's just in the cycle, it's in the routine. And it's just unfortunate that it seems like we're never satisfied. There's always something else, and that we're in this constant cycle of being unhappy. I think it takes huge mental strength, self-evaluation, self-reflection to realize that you can get out of that cycle. And there are things that make you happy, and you can put a stop to this constant madness of always wanting more and trying to achieve more. That I feel like that's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, you make a great point as always. Now, I always really appreciate hearing your perspective. Honestly,
Thank you, man.
I know there's a lot of times where we think very similarly, but there's definitely a lot of points where you touch on things and you paint a picture that I've never painted before. I never thought of that way. So
I'm just glad you can understand it.
Yeah, of course. No, you explain it well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and I think that this was a really good part 2, and I'm glad that you were able to come and finish recording this episode, and I'm thankful that you had the time to answer those questions and go through that. I think that people can really benefit from trying to apply certain concepts for their life, or even just trying to take the understanding that, hey, I can have more control over my life than I do now, or even my life can be better than it is right now, right? It can be better. Yeah. And if you can focus on the things that are important, focus on the things that you can really change, and even use the systems that are in place to your advantage, right? Then there's really no harm that you can do. I mean, of course there'll be failures, but healthy ones. Yeah. And it seems like you'll actually be able to live the life that you want. And that's what I think is really important.
That's the end goal right there. Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you once again for your time. And we'll have you back again soon.
Happy to be here, Trace. Thank you.